bring you to our session today. Before we move on, I would like to just set a few house rules. During the session, we do ask that you please keep yourself muted during just a moderated Q&A section. I'll start off with a few career questions, and then we'll open it up to the students for the student Q&A portion. In that portion, you may raise your hand, and I will call upon students to ask their questions. During the Q&A, I do ask that you try to limit yourself to one question, and please do let us know if your question is for someone in particular. Before I do pass it to Dr. Jody Martin, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. York University acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University itself. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Toronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Quickly going through the event agenda, we just did the event agenda and the land acknowledgement. So then I will pass it to Dr. Jody Martin to give us any updates and kind of introduce our wonderful panelists. Our moderated Q&A is set to start at 6:15. We'll see if we start sooner or later, but set to start at that time. Our student Q&A will start pretty soon after 6:35. I know a lot of you don't want to keep you waiting for too long to ask your questions. And for the last minutes, we're just going to have final remarks, any feedback, and we're going to take a few pictures of the event as well, and any promotions. Moving on, I'm quickly going to talk about what UPSA is and what UPSA does. So the Undergraduate Psychology Student Association is a student-run organization. Myself, I'm a student. The co-presidents who are in attendance today, they're students, we're all students. And what we try to do is we try to foster an active and engaged community. We do these events with collaborations with wonderful, collaborators like the Career Center and the Psych Department. We also provide academic, social, and personal support. So different types of events, different types of services. Some things worthy of mention are peer mentoring. All first-year students are automatically paired with a peer mentor, but no one's limited. Well, it's not limited to first-year students. You may go on our website and request a peer mentor or email us, and they're good for both getting into university, finding growth, and continuing with success. We have peer tutoring. It's completely free. And for a lot of your psych courses, especially the 2000 and some of the 3000 level psych courses, any questions you have, you may just drop in, no registration required, and get any answers that you seek. We have a lot of events and workshops, example today. And lastly, we have a very active marketing team on our social media. Hint, hint, there will be some links at the end that I would very much be happy if you clicked on. And yeah, if I didn't say it already enough, all our services are run by volunteers and are 100% free. All right, so I'll pass it on to Dr. Jody Martin.
Excellent. Thank you, Payman, and welcome everybody. It's really great to be here. We've been talking about this event basically since the fall, so this is very exciting for us. And it's the first time that we're running this event as a collaboration between the Career Education and Development Center, UPSA, and the Department of Psychology. So we're very glad to see you here. And before I introduce our speakers, I do want to just sort of commend everyone who's come tonight on taking this step. It might be your first step, it might be your 15th step, but it is a step in that sort of journey that you're taking to explore what possible careers you could pursue with your degree. And I know it's scary, I've been there. There's a lot of opportunities, and so many so that there seems like there's none sometimes, or at least not specific ones that we can easily identify. So as scary as it might feel, you're not alone. You obviously are here with 96 people who feel similarly, right? There's a whole lot of us here who've gone through this or who are going through this. And there's a lot of supports to help you along the way, including the Career Center or the Career Education and Development Center. So do make sure that you're checking those resources out, and hopefully we can talk a little bit more about them at the end as well. So without further ado, I will introduce our three panelists this evening. So first up, we have Michael Tracy, who's works at, he's the Scotiabank Global Compliance Director in Behavioral Science. We have Shobika Shantakumar, who works for Wild Brain as a DEI specialist. And we have Ronnie O'Connor, who works for the Jays Care Foundation as a programs intern. So I will pass it back to Payman to start us off with the moderated discussion, and have a great time, everybody.
All right. I don't know if it's just me, but I always find it kind of inspirational when Dr. Martin talks. All right, without further ado. Oh, and when I ask the questions, I would maybe ask the wonderful panelists to answer in order so we don't get mixed up like that. So if possible, Michael, I would appreciate it if you could go first. Shabika, if you could go second, and Ronnie, last but not least. Is that okay with everyone? All right. So my first question is, can you please take a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves and give us a quick overview of your career?
For sure. So I'm Mike Tracy, and the Director of Behavioral Science and Global Compliance at Scotiabank. So in my current job, I'm using the tools, techniques of behavioral science to research our own employees' behavior, try and find ways to hopefully make them be more and more compliant with the rules and regulations that we need to follow as a bank. Prior to working at Scotiabank, I was at the Ontario Securities Commission. So that's the regulatory body that oversees the capital markets in Ontario. So like similar to the SEC in the States. Same idea. They get a little more media attention than us for some reason. I can't really figure out why. And before that, I worked in consulting. And before that, I worked at an NGO where we tried to help newcomer women find jobs and get settled in Canada. And that's a bit of my background.
Great. I think I'll go next then. That was quite a quick overview, so I feel like I'll shorten mine a little bit, but my name is Shobika Shantakumar. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from York University in 2016 with an undergraduate degree in psychology. So currently I work as a DEI specialist at Wild Brain. So you may recognize Wild Brain's work through shows like Sonic Prime, The Proud Family, Strawberry Shortcake, Caillou, Teletubbies. So that's where I currently work as a DEI specialist, where I work on creating global alignment, as we have 27 different countries that are a part of this company. And we look towards creating belonging and really identifying how we can create a safe and motivational space for all of our employees. And so that is where I currently work. Just right before, I worked at basically a nonprofit. And I worked at Friends of Ruby as a mental health advisor. And just right before that, I was a cognitive behavioral therapy coach with a program called Bounce Back at CMHA. So that's a little bit about what I did right out of my undergrad.
Cool, so I'll go last. Hi everyone, it's really great to be here. My name is Ronnie O'Connor. I used to go to York. I actually graduated last year in June, so I'm still a kid, if you will. I actually done a lot of like student leadership stuff at York, and Jody Martin was actually one of my professors. She really molded me into the individual that I am today. So if it wasn't for Jody, I wouldn't really have succeeded the way I have. I do a lot of work within the sports industry. I'm connected with the Jays Care Foundation and the MLSE. Right now, I'm actually just an intern at the Jays Care Foundation, and it's an organization that uses baseball in the form of a sport to just really use it to develop youth today. We target 4 specific priority groups. So we target youth living at or below the poverty line. We also target girls in sport. We also target the indigenous community, as well as youth with disabilities, whether that's cognitive or physical. And pretty much we have a vast majority of programs to tackle these priorities. And I've been there for about 2 months now, so I'm still learning the ropes, but I've been really in depth with the organization, and I could say that the work they do is pretty much from the local level across like different schools in the GTA, but it's also nationwide. As one of my colleagues just got back from a visit to Saskatchewan teaching some youth out there to play the game. So it's a really great organization. I'm really happy to be here.
It's kind of funny, like I know the occupation that the wonderful speakers have, and still I'm so surprised to hear all of these different things you can do with a psych degree, because when you're talking to students, they all usually say, oh, I'm trying to go into counseling, or I'm interested in this one very specific thing, but we don't realize how, while we're studying the same thing, how widely it applies. So it's always surprising for me to see. My second question is, can you please share more details about some of your typical duties in your current role?
For sure. I guess I thought it was implied, but I suppose I should have said it. So I did study psych as well. So I have a master's degree in behavioral science from the London School of Economics. So just to finish off my intro, happy to be here with the other panelists, by the way. Ronnie looked me up on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, the Jays are finally interested in me. But as it turns out, it's just that we're on this panel together. So equally as exciting, but I guess I'll have to leave the curveball on the shelf. So yeah, my role is really, really interesting. So we do a lot of experimentation in our world. So we're constantly trying to find new ways of influencing employees to make sure that they're doing the right thing to keep the bank safe. What I mean by that is that they're taking risks that are kind of within what we would expect them to do. Because ultimately banking, you are going to be taking a lot of risks. If you're making investment decisions, nothing's guaranteed, lots of risk involved there. But it's really making sure that they're doing it in alignment with our expectations. That's kind of the goal. So I actually came to psych through economics. So when I worked as a consultant, I was working in economic consulting. And over time, I realized more and more just how little economics, or really the study of incentives, influences our decision making. And that's why I got interested in the behavioral science, because you saw more and more how the psychological side of our world has a lot bigger of an impact than the economic side. It may not feel like that at times, but it certainly is true. So the bank has also kind of come along, and they're now realizing that, look, we've always kind of used carrots and sticks to motivate behavior. That works at times. It's an important sort of foundation, but it's really just the beginning. So now we're starting to test more and more different approaches. So we run a lot of experiments, randomized controlled trials, trying to figure out what we can do that kind of gets the best outcomes for both our employees, but ultimately for our clients. And like, that's the one thing that I'll always hit on with my job. My first job out of grad school, I was working in an NGO. We were settling Syrian refugees. I guess that dates myself a little bit as to when I was working there. And it felt so impactful, right? Because it was really salient what you were doing. Dealing in the financial world, it's a little less in your face, the ways in which you're using your skill set to help people, but it's ultimately still there. Making sure that people's money is safe, making sure that they're being treated fairly, those are really important things. And that's what I try and do in my role.
So in my role, so I am a DEI specialist, as I had mentioned, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I really focus on the aspect of belonging, so ensuring that everyone feels safe and respected in the workplace that we're in. And with that comes a lot of different pieces, whether it is managing like DEI training and managing our overall learning platform. What are the trainings that we are giving all of our employees? How do those trainings actually help the employees to, one, maybe connect with one another, one, connect with external stakeholders, or even just being able to navigate themselves in their truest form at work. So we have all these different trainings that we provide on DEI platforms, as well as I also provide facilitated discussions and trainings as well. So as of recent, I did a microaggression training, practicing allyship. What are the foundations of DEI? So a lot of great trainings in that aspect. I also support the organization in really trying to create global inclusion. So as we look at the entirety of the year, the calendar year, there are many different observances, many different celebrations that may occur. And especially because we're dealing with a global audience, it's really important that we're able to capture all these really important spaces. So I connect with a lot of different spaces to have speakers, create events, also provide resources and opportunities of knowledge sharing. I also run all global committees around belonging, and we have a we have a belonging committee in each of our major spaces. So we have one in the UK, we have one in the US, and we have one in Canada. And basically what we do is we come together and we're able to identify some of the different nuances of challenges that may come regionally, which is really interesting because as I started to work in all my past organizations, we were very specific about the niche population that we were serving. So prior to this, I worked at Friends of Ruby, and this is out of Toronto, Ontario. And it was for youth that identified as queer, that were between the ages of 16 and 29. That was the demographic that I worked with. Prior to that, I was working with Bounce Back, and in Bounce Back, it was very similar. I was focused specifically on individuals from the Tamil community, and I worked with their challenges around depression, anxiety, and their mental health overall. When it came to this role, it expanded. I started to have to think about how do cultural differences, how do nuances in regions, how do languages, how do skills, how do all of those different things impact your ability to learn, impact your ability to connect. Along with that, I work very, very closely with strategic planning around how we're going to continue to improve our hiring practices, how we're going to ensure that everyone has a great experience and really understand the culture of the space from the moment they're hired up until their last day with WildBrain. So overall, that's kind of what I take care of.
So for me, pretty much, I want to say the best thing about my work is that every single day looks entirely different. I could start with my program specifically. So within the programs department, I'm actually working on a new program. It's called RBI Summer Edition. And the program honestly aims to tackle the summer slide. And you might be thinking, what is summer slide? So for youth in pretty much primary school, elementary school, I know you guys call it elementary school over here. COVID really took an impact on the youth of Toronto today, and we've noticed that a lot of youth are in summer school right now, and they really need just the academic help in the summer just to kind of like help them catch up and just really kind of brush up on their academic skills. And we're actually using sport to help them understand and learn those behavioral aspects to help them with self-regulation, as well as just improve their kind of like academic abilities overall. So we're really using sport as the main crutch to kind of like help them build up those skills that they may have lost over the summer and the past kind of like 2 years. And the greatest thing about that is there's a ton of research that goes into our programs. I think the greatest part that I've played within JSK is just being able to be a very versatile kind of like team player. Within JSK, there's also different departments other than the programs department. So we have a philanthropy team, which honestly just work with different sales teams as well as different events. So we have a bunch of galas coming up. We have a golf classic, which is really cool. But we also have a monitoring, evaluation, and learning team, which I spend a lot of my time at just communicating, talking with the different directors and senior managers. And they honestly are the backbone to pretty much all of our programs. They do a lot of research in terms of what's different in the field, what we're lacking, and they really use research to inform our programs, which are all trauma informed. So if you don't know what trauma informed means, it means that we're looking at what could cause trauma in youth and how can we prevent that in our programming. So for example, you might think of a game like, for example, Octopus. When you get tagged, you become a shark. And we're trying to figure out ways to kind of like help youth feel that they're included, feel that they belong, rather than giving them a sense of defeat or a sense of if I lose, that means I'm no good. So really just trying to cater to everyone's self-esteem and just ensure that everyone kind of like leaves the games feeling that they have a sense of um, self-belief and they feel that they could really just contribute to the game as much as possible. Other than the usual 9 to 5 format, I really do feel that some days I'll be either in the office, just typing away at different activities, researching current trends in the field to kind of like help see what summer activities are really popular right now. Or I'm honestly just down at our storage warehouse, just organizing different supplies for different kind of events that we have coming up, which is really cool. And honestly, during this time, I'm honestly just really helping out different programs, different departments, as we pretty much have a all hands on deck mentality. So if my program department isn't specifically doing anything right now, we'll go to our colleagues and see what they need help with. So it's really a big family environment, which is really cool. And as an intern, they really want all of the interns just to experience what it's like just to be a part of the company in general. So they really enforce or they really allow us to explore different parts of the organization. And that really just helped me to hone my skills and just find out that, what I want to do in my career. Since I'm still new to the workforce, it's really good in the sense of trying, what works, what doesn't work for me, what I like and what I don't like. And I really do like the approach that they do take to research. And I speak to, my supervisor, some of my program managers, and they shy away from research. And I feel that, not because they did a program in psychology when they went to school, but I really do feel that putting the research behind a lot of our programs has definitely helped us reach a lot of our goals and really just make our programs the best that they can be to honestly just help the youth. And I really do feel that my involvement with the monitoring, evaluation, and learning team has just really understood or grasped the possibility of what could actually come out of research. And I feel that even though, it's not a field in particular where I could use my degree of face value, I really do feel that psychology is so broad that no matter where you do end up, you get to use your degree in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, honestly, what I do on a day-to-day basis is so different each and every day.
So we have a jack of all trades then. And I do think there's a wealth of information being shared right now. I kind of honed in and kind of picked something out of everything everyone said. Michael, what you said really reminded me of nudge theory, and I hope I'm not disappointing my critical thinking professor here. Nudge theory was changing people's behavior by not limiting their options, but rather changing how they're presented. So a lot of your research kind of reminded me of that with the bank. And Shavika, I think a lot of what you mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities to practice some EDI principles or inclusivity. Actually, at Calumet and Staunton colleges, you can become a work-study student, and a lot of those same principles, especially AODA for people with disability too, those are still in place, and you can kind of get your hands wet with that as well. I would be remiss if I didn't promote my own club, UPSTA, as well. Yeah, we do keep those standards as well. And lastly, Ronnie, what you said really reminded me of the stuff we talk about in motivation class and kind of behavior modification, especially about the children and kind of helping them find the best way to succeed at school. Now, enough of me speaking. Next question is, what specifically, and I know Ronnie, you kind of touched on this, would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of your career? And what would you say has been the most challenging for you?
It's a tough one to go first on. Yeah, so you know what, a really good one is, I don't know if anyone remembers, I guess it was, oh man, time flies, maybe 2 years ago now, there was the GameStop saga, and there was, anyone invested in Robinhood will be aware of this, where ultimately every regulator in the world suddenly became really interested in how to deal with these discount brokerages that allow people to invest with lots of money, or sorry, invest and potentially leverage themselves to the point where they're putting a lot of money at risk. There was some actual tragedy around the Robinhood one, where a way they presented information ultimately led to a really bad outcome for an individual. I won't go into it, but actually getting to sort of be the behavioral science expert and hold the hand the head of the Securities Commission as we kind of developed our response to it, and then worked to build out new regulations that hopefully will help protect investors from that was probably a highlight, because it really shows how, like, you may not realize it because you're surrounded by other people that are sort of thinking of the world the same way you do. They're all people studying psychology, so we see the world very similarly. When you get out there into the wild, people see the world very differently, and ultimately, you'll have a lot of value to people, because sort of diversity of thought's one of our greatest assets as any organization. So in terms of challenges, I would say the one thing that's very tough about dealing with anything psychological is there's a lot of armchair experts out there. And you're going to have to get very used to dealing with that, because everyone will have an opinion. And unless you come with the facts, it's hard to override their opinion, especially when they're sort of above you in the hierarchy. You're all, new grads or soon to be new grads. So it's something you'll have to deal with, but it's a skill like any other, and you can kind of work on it over time. But I think that's definitely one of the biggest challenges.
I'm not sure if all of us are answering this question. Yes? Great. Okay, so in terms of rewarding, what's really amazing with the role that I'm doing is I get to meet every new hire right from like the first day. And the conversations I have with these new hires are around what the culture of the space is and what they're hoping to gain from the culture in our space. And it's so great to hear insights from other people's experiences in other places versus what they're hoping to achieve here. And so it's an opportunity to speak with so many different folks. On a monthly basis, I would say I talk to about 30 plus new hires. And so every day is a new story. My calendar is always full, and I actually leave it open for people to schedule opportunities to speak with me as well. And that, on top of doing the research, all the education, these are real life experiences that we're also taking into consideration as we're building our policies, as we're building our hiring strategy, as we're building our onboarding. So I think it's just really rewarding to know that it's not one person that decides like all of this. It's every single new hire has, say in how their process is through their experience. So that's really rewarding for me. The challenging part is the exact same thing, because I'm supporting 700 folks in this company, and being able to not only ensure that there's a sense of inclusion and belonging, but that we're also creating global alignment. And a lot of the things that we're doing is very, very challenging. There may be small nuance changes, like for example, I was doing some belonging committee meetings, and we had an agenda ready to go, structures all good to go. I did it with our Canadian team, which is Vancouver and Toronto, and Halifax. And the conversation went very well received. And on top of that, it just felt like a very good alignment between the structure that was created in the space. I did the same thing with the US, and we actually abandoned the structure. Although that the committees were the exact same, the intentions, the goals, the initiatives were the same. We actually had to scratch the entire structure and readjust all of our initiatives to ensure that it aligns more with that space in that region. And now I have another one on Friday, and I'm coming in with the structure, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know what's going to happen to it. But that's really what's amazing about this job, but yet so challenging.
Honestly, I think the most rewarding aspect of this role in particular is the fact that you're surrounded by a team of individuals that want to help you grow and learn, not only in your role, but just as an individual. And I think the beauty of JSK is that, our programs, they reach not only a, provincial or national level, but we also have a very small team that kind of like bring these programs to life. Our team is consistent of, I want to say 53, 54 people right now. But our goal this year is to reach 50,000 youth across Canada. And it really takes the whole team to kind of like be involved really be on the same page to kind of like make that, goal come to life. And for me, we've had a lot of training around facilitation because we facilitate our programs to, a bunch of different people from youth to coaches and also to community leaders. So there's a lot of room for practice. And in some companies, failure can be seen as, the most dreaded thing in a company. But within J's Care, failure is only a stepping stone to help you to success. And that's one of the greatest things I could say about J's Care is knowing that you're in an environment where everyone around you wants to push you to help you to learn, grow, and develop your whole skill set, which has been really great for me. But on the challenging side, I definitely have to say that JSK is definitely one of the fastest paced workplaces on the planet. And for my program specifically, knowing that it's a very new program, we could, for example, we came up with a schedule for our summer camp 2 weeks ago. And we're still working on it. Everything's very like relatively new because we were partnered with a different company and for I want to say for the past 3 years, the program ran as is. There wasn't any issues or major issues, I should say. But we're not partnered with them anymore, and this is the first time that we're actually running the summer camp ourselves. So there's a lot of trial and error, going back to the drawing board, figuring things out, what works, what doesn't, what can we take from the past, and what can we do differently. And our schedule, pretty much, me and my supervisor, we came up with a draft schedule. We sent it to our program director, and one day it was there. The next minute it was like, okay, we're gonna start this again from scratch. And I could, for example, be in the middle of a task, and my program director could say to me the next day, okay, we need to change our approach, or we need to do this differently. So at JSK, things definitely change on the fly. And knowing that I've had, midterms and exams to kind of like prepare for, but when you go to the workforce, it's now deadlines and different tasks to kind of like use your critical thinking skills, use your research too. It's definitely been challenging to switch on the fly. And I really do feel that 1 minute you could be researching one topic and then you'd have to kind of switch your mindset to tackle the tackle the issue from a different lens. And I really do feel that that kind of fast-paced environment really helps me to apply the critical thinking skills that I learned through, the program at York. And it really just is a whole different ball game from theory to actual practice. So I definitely say that as much as it's been a challenge, it's been a great learning opportunity just to be able to understand what it's like to work under pressure and work, against deadlines. And yeah, I really do feel that it definitely has pushed me and it's definitely pushed a lot of my other interns to be able to come up with ideas just on literally on the go and really just take the opportunity to, really suggest new things or, suggest their perspective of what we think we should do moving forward.
What's interesting to me is a lot of these I could see people completely flipping. So maybe actually enjoying what you don't like and not enjoying what you find is most rewarding. So I really do find that it's so related to what your personal interests are as well and what you seek in a job. So it's always very helpful to ask someone who has that job and see what the different aspects are. Now, I do notice that it is 6:37, and as promised, we would open the floor at this moment. So if you have a question for our wonderful panelists, raise your hand and I will call upon your name to ask your question. If you do not feel too comfortable with speaking your question, you can put it in the chat and I can also read it out to our panelists. And oh, please, I would like to put a pre-excuse if I slaughter anyone's name. Correct me right after, and I apologize for that preemptively. I see that Elsa has a question, so please go ahead.
Hi, I have a question for Shobika. It's a very simple question. I was just hoping that you could repeat your role at your company because what you do sounds very interesting to me and I hadn't heard of that position before. I didn't catch the name though.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called a DEI specialist, so diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. And we focus on creating a space of belonging for employees. And the purpose of doing that is not only to create that safe space, it also, in like a business perspective, if you think about it, when you're coming into a workplace, you want to enjoy the space, you want to enjoy what you're doing, you want to feel welcomed, you want to feel respected. And oftentimes, more than not, a lot of people leave their workplace because they feel that it's uncomfortable or quote unquote that toxic work environment, right? And so it's important for me to really look at what our workspace looks like, ask all those questions, create surveys, really open up dialogue to ensure that we're creating that space for everyone and not just a general, blanket statement across the organization.
I can really relate to that experience. I'm glad that there is a position that's specifically directed towards making that better. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. So the way I'll do it is I'll read one from the chat and then I'll ask someone who has raised their hand. So kind of hit the same timeline. So Stephen asks, this is a question for everyone. I was wondering how and at what point did you realize that pursuing your current career is something that you wanted to do? I find it very difficult to get a grasp of what I want to do with my future.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I mean, I think that's the long and the short of it. Like you're not bound to anything, right? You can do something for a little while and then find something you like more, or if you love what you're doing, then keep doing it. I've had quite a few different careers in my career. I've worked at an NGO, consulting, worked for the government. Now I'm working at a bank. They're all obviously related in terms of what I was doing, but each role is very different, brought very different challenges and very different opportunities. So I think, the worst thing you can do is not get started. And I think start taking some steps towards building your career, getting some skills. I think that would be my advice.
I can jump in there as well. I had no idea coming out of my undergrad. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to be, a resource for folks to really, whether it's supporting their mental health or something really in that space. But I didn't know what that was. So I explored everything. I was like, I'm going to learn and do everything. When I was a bounce back coach, so when I was a cognitive behavioral therapy coach, I was one of 12 people on this pilot program. And what was really cool is I got to work on the back end of this program. So I was supporting folks. I talked to about 40 plus folks a week around their anxiety, their mental health, the depression symptoms, things like that. But I was also developing the program in the background. And that sparked a huge interest for me. Meanwhile, I'm also in the DEI committee. Like, I just wanted to go into all those spaces that made me curious. And that continued to kind of navigate where I am like today. So I went from being in that really heavy mental health space to, maybe I want to be more back end. So I went to become a mental health advisor. I had, I think, about 10 counselors that I was helping them create programs. I was helping them identify how they can adapt their programs to support a specific community. And the more and more I did that, I realized I was spending a lot of time with these employees and making sure that their well-being was met and they were okay. And I was like, I need to learn more about how I can support the folks that are actually providing these services. And then I ended up in this DEI space. And I don't know where I'll end up tomorrow, but all I really know is like getting into psychology really opened up my opportunities to dive into all these spaces with continual learning and continual knowledge. And with that DEI, like I started doing DEI, I feel like in high school, like I just kind of always stuck around, and I'm so grateful that I'm now doing a career out of it. I actually also run a company now where I provide consulting for organizational development in Canada and the US. And so now it's like a passion project that became employment. I don't know how it happened, but I love it. I love everything that I do. And that's really what's important. Like you'll start to really see what you like doing versus what you don't, and just keep following that.
Yeah, honestly, I have to reiterate the sentiments of both Michael and Shabika. Even myself, like I'm still trying to figure things out and piece things together, but I think guiding questions really kind of just like helped me to put a lot of the pieces together. So especially when I was in like my second year, for example, I asked myself, what am I passionate about? What is it that I could see myself doing? And those questions, they're very like subject to change because I could be passionate about, sports today, but tomorrow, I could go into a completely different sector and, just make a 180 switch. But the other question I asked is how could I use my, career to leverage what I want to do in the future? So thinking about psychology, I thought what aspects of psychology do I currently like and how could I use that in different organizations? And I think when you piece a lot of these questions together, you do have either a list or a pinpointed area that you'd like to kind of go into. And I felt that, putting sports together and doing a lot more research, facilitation, as well as trying to incorporate behavioral self-regulation skills really was where I kind of like found my sweet spot, just so to speak. And that really just kind of like helped me to be more intentional with the companies that I looked up. And I think everything does begin with research after you've, answered some of the difficult questions that you have for yourself. And it really just begins with seeing what's out there, seeing what opportunities that come up. And they don't necessarily have to be actual like career paid positions. I remember the way I started out at the MLSC. I started out as just a volunteer, and that got me in. That got my foot in the door, and I really got to learn about the company's culture, about what they do, about the different teams and the events that they run. And from there, that's how I started coaching with their home ice hockey program. And that volunteer experience was really key to helping me land the intern position that I do have now. So I really do feel that if you put yourself out there and you're willing to explore different kind of like avenues now, even though it may not be something that you're interested in, I do feel that there's a lot of merit in putting yourself out there, learning different skills, because at the end of the day, you have a lot of skills that are transferable. And it's really about how you take these skills from what you learn, whether they're volunteer positions at school, and how you kind of like mold them into creating a potential position for yourself or creating a blueprint that you want to follow. So I really do feel that, having the courage to kind of like ask yourself the difficult questions and really just try to piece things together depending on where you're at, where your interests are, what you like about psychology, and really just looking out and just not really being too nitpicky about what's out there at the current moment, but really just trying to say, okay, I'm gonna explore something entirely different because that's honestly where, curiosity comes in and you could pretty much end up in a role that you're like, I never knew I wanted to be in this role, but you could, love it twice as much as, anything else out there. So I really do feel it comes with a lot of courage, a lot of research, and just really asking yourself what it is that you want to do in the future.
I'm gonna add that, yeah, you're probably not gonna find what you love or a career you love right out of the bat. And as we saw with a lot of the speakers, they moved around and kind of it's inching towards what you love and keeping the aspects you want and maybe moving away from the ones that you don't want. So it's always a process. With the next question, I'll go back to the people with their hands raised up. Michelle, would you like to speak now?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. This is super helpful, I think, for all of us. So I'm actually a mature student returning back to school, taking psychology to pursue a different career. And one thing I will say is it's very competitive out there. So I think a really important question, and this might actually be for you, Payman, as well, is what are the first things to think about post-graduation that help the job search become less intimidating? And I'm just thinking of things like, how important is LinkedIn? How important is connecting with people and getting a mentor? So what are some suggestions around connecting with others? Because I think one thing that comes to mind is we need to, of course, make money, and that's our first goal, but we want to make sure we're pursuing our purpose at the same time. So what are those key steps to take post-graduation and job search?
Yeah, I would say like things like LinkedIn. I've never gotten a job through LinkedIn, so it's hard to put my finger on how valuable it really is. I would say doing things like reaching out to job posters helps, and sometimes LinkedIn helps you do that. We just hired someone on my team who kind of came through a recommendation through LinkedIn, right? Someone else I knew, not that well, but well enough, said, "Hey, maybe you'll hire this person." So like, it certainly can't hurt you unless you do something silly on LinkedIn. Social media still, so be careful. But I would recommend you do it. But more so, those direct connections are quite valuable. Figure out who the job poster is, reach out, have a coffee chat with them. You never know where it will go. The other thing I would say is like employers love over posting qualifications, right? They have a view of this like perfect candidate that exists out there. They don't exist out there, and they know that. They just want to get someone as close as possible. So if you see things like a relatively entry-level position asking for 5 years of experience, like throw your hat in the ring. You don't have to be the perfect candidate. You just have to be the best available candidate. So you don't know until you try. That would be my advice.
I agree with a lot of what you had said as well. LinkedIn definitely is an amazing resource. What was really helpful for me is I started to look for people that were doing things that made me curious. And I started to connect with these people. I reached out. I just asked for opportunities to listen. Sometimes I just wanted to be in the same room. There's times where I've like shadowed people that had nothing to do with the role that I was currently in, but I was so curious to know what they were doing. And I really wanted to understand how that role was, whether impacting people that were accessing services or impacting the general population. Something that was really cool for me was when I was at CMHA, I was a bit hesitant as a new hire, new grad to kind of go into that space and just ask a million questions. But the first day I walked in, the CEO gave me like a little pin and said, "This is my last pin, like hold on to it." And it stuck with me like immediately. And I reached out to the CEO as much as I could to be like, I want to know how you're doing this. So during lunches, I would sit next to them and say, "Hey, like, I'm curious. This program currently has only 8 staff. How do you expect for it to grow?" Before I left, 4 years later, we had 75 staff on that team serving 25 different languages. This particular, like the CEO had a vision and I needed to understand that vision. And in understanding that vision, I started to see like what I wanted to do and what I really wanted to explore. So what I would say is like find those people that are doing those amazing things and just connect with them as often as you can. Reach out to people, friends, family, ask questions, sit in those spaces, join talks. I've attended so many LinkedIn trainings, not just for the content, but for the speaker. And I will connect with the speaker after and say, "I really appreciated this. This is something that I didn't really understand. And maybe like we can connect over a call." And more often than not, these people will say yes. They're happy to know that people are enjoying their content and they're happy to know that people are passionate about what they're doing as well. So just try your best to connect to like people that inspire you really.
Yeah, and I'll definitely add on to that. I was actually at like a webinar the other day, and they were talking about building financial wealth for marginalized individuals and people of color. And one of the things that a speaker kind of like said that still kind of like sticks with me even today is that when you're trying to build a network, you can't be shy or you can't really be timid in terms of what you're trying to achieve and what your goals are. And that really just speaks to being able to put yourself out there confidently and honestly just, being an advocate for yourself and really just trying to see what you can get out of different opportunities that come. And it really just resonates with me because if you're trying to, build your career, build your network, it can be daunting if you're not really, if you don't really know what to say, if you're really in a position where you're like, I don't know what I want right now. And honestly, those things are pretty much okay. As Shabika said, a lot of people out there on LinkedIn and just in different fields in general are really willing to help people. It's just you have to kind of like get over that hurdle of, okay, I'm in a position that I need help. How do I go about that? And again, just putting yourself out there is really important. and it could do you so much, and you honestly wouldn't know what could come out of a simple coffee chat. I've seen it happen for a lot of my other friends that graduated, whether it was last year with me or a couple years before that. But yeah, just really putting yourself out there and, really going for what it is that you want is like super important. But one thing that I would say for more of the students that are still at York, still kind of like finding their footing in school, is just finding ways to leverage your own strengths. And one way that myself and a lot of leaders like Payman did was really give ourselves to a lot of research opportunities that came up within the program of psychology, but also a lot of student leadership opportunities. Those things also look great on resumes, and they really kind of like help you to build skills, whether it's time management or prioritization when it comes to juggling different opportunities, be it school or just opportunities in terms of running events for organizations that you're a part of. I really do feel that these are being more valued, and they do give you some experience whilst you're still studying. So anything that I feel or I felt at the time that would leverage my opportunities to being hired by a particular company or just in general, I really kind of like seeked out those opportunities, and I went to, a lot of my professors and I asked them, when you were in my shoes, what kind of things did you do? What did you get up to kind of thing? And a lot of them did say, I was, president of, this student organization. I did this. I volunteered my time doing this. And then, later down in my, fourth or fifth year, my professor that I volunteered with, he hired me on to a research program, and he gave me one of the greatest recommendations that I got for, grad school. So it really is finding out things that you could just apply yourself to that aren't really academic related, or they really just help you kind of like hone your skills away from, just studying. And I really do feel that if you, go to school and, go home once things are done, that's totally okay, because school can be a lot. But I really do feel that when it comes to leveraging your strengths, you really have to go beyond, your textbooks and really get some application in terms of, student leadership, or whether it's just volunteer experience, because people do value those things, and employees do look at those things for sure.
I'm gonna quickly add here. Yeah, every single job or position I've ever had has been through a friend. Like I have done no searching on my own. It's just someone told me about it. So I think a good amalgamation of what everyone said is have a bit of courage, approach that person, talk to people, make friends. And guess what? Someone who knows you, if they see an opportunity that they think, hey, it would be a good fit for this person, they'll let you know. So the word of mouth, yes, we're in an internet age where you can access things very easily, but word of mouth is extremely underrated still, to my mind, and it's still very useful. Now I see that Preetha's question was answered in the chat, so I am going to, in the interest of time, go to the question underneath. Ashley asked, do you have any general advice for someone post-grad with an undergraduate degree in psych? I struggle to figure out where to begin or what are the next steps of pathways to take with psychology.
I think I'll defer on this one. I don't know that I'm the right person to answer it.
I can maybe go a little bit, just because I've had so many different career opportunities. What I really did was I kind of wanted to start somewhere. I told myself maybe mental health is a space that I want to be in. What can I do with what I have right now? And I did a lot of research and I looked around for sure. It took some time, but once I was in that space, I must say, with my undergraduate degree, like I continue to excel without having the need to get my master's. I do have it now. However, I was just so adamant about learning in all of these spaces that I took every opportunity as an opportunity to learn a new skill. So when I started as a cognitive behavioral therapist at Bounce Back, you would think that, you would continue just in that role and that's the space you're going to be in mental health. But I joined the QI committee, which was quality improvement. I wanted to see how we can improve the program. I joined the DEI committee to see how we could improve the organization. I even heard about an opportunity where we wanted to send in, some folks in the organization wanted to send in a proposal to have a mobile mental health vehicle that would go to schools and support queer youth. And I'm not sure if many of you heard it. It's called Mobies, and it was a great proposal, but there was some challenges getting it off the ground. And so several of us just volunteered our time, and we spent time on this project, and the proposal got approved. And that is what got me my next job. And my next job was a mental health advisor, where I was coming with strategic planning for an entire organization for mental health programs, with, you know, supporting counselors around what is the need in the community, what is the need for these folks. And that was really what like inspired me. I realized that it wasn't just about that degree. It was about like, what was I passionate about? Was I willing to learn about it? Did I take the time? It takes time. It really does take that time and effort to sit down and say, I am going to purposely spend all this additional time to learn all these new skills. But in the long run, it really, really helped me. And I continue to do that even now. Although I'm the DEI specialist currently in my space and we're supporting the belonging committee, I'm like on the fun club. I'm like talking to all the QI departments. I connect with communications, and I'm just having every possible venue of learning and seeing how I can use some of those to either engage and really, you know, enhance my skills, or is that going to help me for the future if I was going to go into something else? Like, these are just great opportunities that add to your resume. So I can just see a lot of questions about like, do I need a master's? Is an undergraduate degree enough? Like, does it matter if it's this honors versus? I had a BA in psychology. I think I had a very interesting journey in university where I came to York after my second year. My mother had dealt with something very traumatic at the time. And so she said, please come home. I was in Waterloo at the time. I left everything, came home, and I said, like, what am I going to do? And I just said, just learn, go talk to people, go learn, just figure this out, go learn. And that's how I'm here. Yeah, so I would say with an undergraduate degree, you can do a lot, but more than the degree, just think about like, what is it that you're passionate about and what is it that you're putting your time and effort into? And that's really what will come to fruition.
I think Shobika just summed it up like perfectly. Like there's literally nothing to add. Yeah, literally summed it up great.
All right. The next person with their hand up is Susu. Would you like to go next?
Yep, thank you. So I think I'll just follow the trend in the chat and ask Shobika about the same thing, kind of about the masters. The thing is, you mentioned that you worked at Bounce Back, and that's like really specific, like the cognitive behavioral therapy. Did you have like BA by then? Because there's this like, and I'm not sure if it's a rumor or like everyone just knows that the like, oh, if you have a BA in psychology or like if you have like undergrad in psychology, you cannot work in therapy related stuff. Like you need a master's for this. So I just want to make sure like where you were at.
Great question. So I thought the same thing. I came out of my undergrad and I was like, am I going to go get my master's just so I can go into the mental health space? And that's where the research comes in. At the time that I joined CMHA, I was doing a lot of research of how I can be in the mental health space without pursuing that additional education for maybe when I wanted to do it later. And with this CMA particular program, when it initially started, it was a cognitive behavioral therapy coaching position. So there was a nuance to the position that scripted us and was supported by psychologists and counselors that will ensure that we are doing our role appropriately. And so we had ongoing support from psychologists, we had ongoing support from counselors, we had continual support from managers, and it was a program to identify CBT skills with individuals that were experiencing anxiety, depression, and other symptoms of mental health. And we had like pamphlets, we had books, we would walk them through it. I was in the mental health space. That was my goal. I wasn't thinking that I wanted to be a counselor. I wasn't thinking that I wanted to be a social worker, because I knew those roles required a little bit more, but I knew I wanted to be in that mental health space. And that's what I did. I looked for many opportunities, and just so y'all know, it's still an opportunity. Like CMHA, that program, it's expanded so large that now they have clinicians, they have multiple, like I think like 10, 15 psychologists, 100 staff. It's a remote like opportunity. It was the perfect way for me to kind of get in through that gate. And then once I was there, I said, am I going to pursue a master's in social worker counseling? And I was like, no, like that's actually not what I want to do. I realized I want to build these programs. And so it took a different direction for me, but it really depends on like what your passion really like brings forward. I hope that answered your question.
Are we all good with the question, Susu?
That was amazing, actually. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Excellent. Okay, I'm gonna move to, I hope I say this right, Giel's question on the chat. What are some of the skills you have developed with the help of psychology, such as learning strategy, memory, etc., that have helped with your job searching and become a valuable member of a team or company? This one's for everyone.
The one thing that I would say I think I really developed while I was doing the master's degree was kind of the ability to talk about things when you're uncomfortable talking about them. And that's ultimately what an interview is in a lot of ways. So I think, yeah, that being able to get comfortable being uncomfortable really goes a long way, because if you can come across as convincing in an interview, that puts you on the right track towards getting jobs. Like interviewing is definitely a skill, and it's one that I think borrows a lot from what you'll learn in your degree. So that's definitely one.
Shamika, would you like to go next?
I feel like I'm talking quite a bit, so I'm going to defer this one, and we'll wait for the next one.
For me, I definitely say that being able to critically think and in general just like being specific, falsifying ideas. Um we talk a lot about falsifiability in psychology, and we know the value that, you know, if an idea or theory isn't falsifiable, then, you know, we understand the parameters and what that means. But really just looking when you're building a program or parts of a program here at JSCare, we really try to falsify our ideas to say, will this work? Will this, you know, kind of what kind of like features will this entail? And what parts can we actually improve? And that process of refining our programs really helps with a lot of the scientific methods that we learn in psychology, and using those kind of like skills, tools, and measures, that's how we create programs that are able to, you know, help youth develop the skills that they have. So I really do feel that a lot of the scientific methods that we learn about and, you know, we study for, you know, for me, for example, I was thinking, when am I going to use this kind of thing, especially if I'm not in, you know, my direct field as of yet. And pretty much we use it on a day-to-day basis, if I'm being honest. And really just being able to, you know, falsify ideas, theories, or just different kind of like paths that we're looking at really has helped me to kind of like say, okay, this is what I'm comfortable with. Let me apply it to a field that I'm like, okay, still figuring out, and it's really helped so far.
I'm gonna quickly add here too that it's also a lot of those. Oh, Mike, did you want to add something?
I was just going to jump in on something Ronnie said, but a few people have said it, this sort of like idea of like working in your field. Most people don't work in any field, right? They just work at a business doing something. And ultimately, what you're going to bring from your field is the way in which you view problems. Everyone views problems differently. Having diverse opinions on how we should solve problems is what leads to better outcomes. So I think people should avoid getting fixated on the idea of like, I must find a psychology job, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And ultimately, you're going to have much more success in your job hunt if you just look at the types of problems that a role is trying to solve and think about the ways in which you can help the company solve them. Sorry, that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you for jumping in. It's definitely encouraged. Yeah, I was just going to add that it's a lot of those counseling and speaking skills as well. Like I've heard multiple times people just say, "Oh, I feel really comfortable when talking to you." And whether you're at an interview, whether you're doing an intake with someone, in so many different avenues, just those skills that you start building, just in your everyday speech, those start to slowly affect and accumulate how things happen over your life. Moving on. I see that Sabria's question was answered by Ronnie in the chat. So thank you for that, Ronnie. Again, Eamon's answer was answered. Eamon's question was answered in the chat. And of course, if you would like you would like us to add on to that answer, please do let us know in the chat. Just in the interest of time, I'm going down questions for everyone or questions that have not been answered in the chat. You know what? Maybe I'll also read the answers so that everyone can benefit from them. So Jasmeet asked, do you have any advice for someone who is in the last semester of honors psychology with relatively no experience or volunteer experience? Michael said that employers will want to see proof that you can do things they need. If you have no work experience, it becomes very hard for them to understand your value. A very useful skill is building a portfolio of the skills you want to demonstrate. For example, building a blog to demonstrate your research skills, finding an experiment online using mTurk or Prolific. The opportunities are endless, and as Ronnie mentioned earlier, it doesn't need to be paid work, so volunteering is a great first step. I started doing my career working on a horse farm. You never know where things will lead. So that's that's the best piece of advice. Start at a horse farm, you'll end up at a bank. It's foolproof, 100% correlation.
It's a very natural line of work. Yeah, it just flows right into it.
Exactly. That, and the horse's neck is the statistical rise. Okay. Let me go down the chat. Do you have any advice for someone who has no volunteer experience on where to start? Okay, this does seem to be a bit of a recurrent question. So is there anything anyone wanted to add about gaining volunteer experiences, etc.?
So the one thing I would say is kind of think about the recruitment process. The first thing you have to do is get your resume through. The second thing you have to do is survive a couple of rounds of interviews, presumably. So when you're doing volunteer experience, think about, obviously you should volunteer for things that you care about, number one, but also think about how you're going to frame the experience in your resume, in your cover letter, in your interviewing in a way that paints you in a positive light. So, picking up garbage in your neighborhood is great. Probably not the best thing to do to try and get yourself a job. So think about those volunteer opportunities that allow you to build on the skills that are aligned to the types of jobs you want to have. Employers are quite silly. They'll tell you exactly what they want in their job postings. Give them that back verbatim in some way, and they'll be very happy to take a chance on you. So if an employer says, they want someone with good teamwork skills, find an opportunity where you're volunteering with other people, right? You want leadership skills, maybe volunteer at one of Ronnie's baseball camps. I used to work baseball camps for kids. It was a great opportunity to take some leadership on. So there's lots of ways in which you can build the skills that you need. Just make sure that they're, again, aligned with your interests, but also aligned with, the roles you'd like to get.
I will also add nonprofit spaces are a great resource. A lot of nonprofit spaces love volunteers, love individuals that are there to learn. So, look around your community and see what nonprofit spaces are there, and see if there are any needs that they would like to be met, and how you can support that. It's a really, really great place to start. That's where I started.
Such a great call out. I was trying to think on what are the portals you go through, but just go directly to the source, straight from the horse's mouth, if you will. ultimately people will have a hard time turning down free labor, especially charities, NGOs, and not-for-profits. So if they're in a space where you'd like to work one day, definitely just knock on their door, see what they say. I feel like that's very baby boomer advice, you know, just like demand that they give you a job. But if you're not asking for money, they're very likely to say yes.
I think I'd add on to this piece as well, and it kind of ties into what Shabika was saying about different kind of communities and just going to different organizations. But I'd honestly say network yourself into communities and get to know people not only in your program, but just people that have similar goals to you. One thing that I did a really good job at was connecting with different student leaders and different kind of like students in my program. And Payman and I, we spend a lot of time in similar meetings, similar calls. So, you know, just building different relationships with different people really kind of like helps you down the line as well. You'd be very interested to know how many people that I know of that really kind of got goals that said, hey, we used to work together on this project. I know you'd be great. You want to come over and see, you know, check this out kind of thing. So really making, you know, relationships now whilst you're in school or you're close to finishing school, I really do think helps because you kind of, you know, you go through a period where you don't talk for a bit and then you check in on each other, update each other, see where you're at kind of thing. And you'd honestly be surprised at what, you know, the community has to offer and what networks or what you could get out of your network. And it really just comes down to investing in social capital at the end of the day. Because at the MLSE Launchpad, not only do we provide opportunities within the Launchpad itself for the MLSE, but we also give updates to what's going on in the community. So it could be, you know, things that are completely unrelated to do with sports, but they still, as Michael was saying, still foster different skill sets that are, you know, just as transferable to a role that you're looking for within psychology. So I really do feel that it comes down to just putting in the time and effort to really focus on, you know, being a part of a community or, you know, fostering and building different relationships with people that you are studying with or people that you want to get to know a little bit better.
I'm gonna slightly add to that as well. I very much agree with what everyone said, but especially what you said, Michael, kind of popped out to me that you really need to get on top of your resume game and your what is it, cover letter game, because no one's ever gonna know how amazing you are if your resume doesn't see it, if they don't talk to you. So two ways to do that is either they have to know you from before, so networking, or you have to have a good cover letter and resume. And this one's completely legal. You can just go on ChatGPT and be like, give me feedback on my resume and cover, and it will do that. And you can just give it the job requirement and say, hey, how is my resume in relation to this? And it will do that. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was going to say ChatGPT might be taking it even too far. Like literally just parrot back to them exactly what they've said. It's like, we want somebody who can do X. You say, I can do X. Like, I've reviewed enough resumes in my life. It's like the easier you make it on the reviewer, the happier they're going to be. And I think you ultimately want them to be happy while they're reviewing your resume. There isn't a lot of science to it, but I do think like the shorter, the better. And the more directly to what they need, the better. And like also, I mean, definitely write a cover letter. It doesn't have to be long, you know, paragraph, like maybe even less than a full paragraph, but just literally do something that differentiates the fact that like, we all know that you're sending your resumes out to dozens, maybe hundreds of places, but like taking that second to write a tailored letter, it's like, even if it has spelling mistakes in it, or, you know, it's like, I would rather see that someone tried. It's like, I get that you're not, you know, working at Scotiabank isn't the highlight of anyone's life necessarily. Don't tell my employer that I said that, but it's just that ultimately showing that you're trying and that you're not just spamming your resume out, even though that's exactly what of course is going on, is a worthwhile gambit to employ.
Very sage advice. All right. Since the next question is kind of answered in the chat, I'm going to move on. And if we have extra time, I'll kind of, take a few steps back. So I'm going to move on to Michelle's question. It's a very kind of short one, but Shabika, if you don't mind me asking, did you get your master's while continuing to work, or did you take time off?
Great question. Just keep in mind, everybody is different, right? How your learning styles are very different. And so it may not align with what mine is, but I actually did full-time work with full-time school. But hear me out. This actually started right at the beginning of the pandemic. So everybody was sent home. There was a bit of lack of structure in how the job was going to continue to be done. So I shared with my employer at the time that I was interested in pursuing school, and that was also online at the time. So it was like the perfect combination of like just online work that I was doing from home. And it was a 2-year program in a master's in industrial and organizational psychology. So I got that in about 1.5 years because I was just at home doing everything. And I was just like, okay, like I have some time. The pandemic is happening. I have nowhere to go. So that's kind of what I did. But that like it's really about what works for you. What really helps is you can talk to your employers about this, especially with CMHA. They were very understanding. They kind of asked me what I needed. And I wanted to switch to part-time. Is that something I wanted to try? Or like, did you want to try full-time, see if it was feasible? And if it was, then you can continue to do so. We can change the aspects of your role. I was already transitioning into more back-end work. So I wasn't talking to, 40 folks in a week. I was actually reduced down to about 5 or 6 folks because I was working on QI and development. And as my learnings actually supported me to do that, they were actually excited for me to get into school and engage in that way. So see what works for you, I guess. But that's what I did.
All right, thank you very much. One question that I find very interesting is asked by Veronica. Are there any opportunities in university that you regret not taking, or any that had a really significant impact on your undergrad experience? And this is for everyone.
I guess I'll go. I didn't see any unmutes. Oh, please, Michael, go ahead. Okay. I regret not like asking for more help. During my undergrad, I think I was just so focused on getting through my undergrad that I was blinded by the amount of resources that were around me. I spent all my time in that Scott library, like all the time. I was there every single day. And I was not using like some of the resume help that was available to me. So like, I wish I actually accessed all of those services that were, really provided for me. And that would have made me a bit more comfortable transitioning out of university into that space of how am I going to start doing, like, how do I write that resume, that cover letter? You don't really have classes for that. Unless you're actually accessing the resources that the university has for you, or you're learning it by yourself. And I took the difficult route of learning it by myself. And I really, really wish I used my time more wisely, and I used the resources that were always like super readily available for me. But yeah, I think that was one of my biggest regrets.
My biggest regret is that I didn't stretch enough. As you get older, you'll find that your body doesn't bounce back quite as much. So that's the one thing, maybe a good habit to form while you're in undergrad if you're still young. The other thing I'd say is, ultimately you're paying for all the things Shabika just mentioned. So not only are they there for you, they're there because you paid for it. So I highly recommend that you use them. And the other thing, I think someone mentioned earlier about how competitive things are, right? It's like, use every competitive advantage you can get. You can get someone to review your resume, great. If you can use ChatGPT to review your resume, great. If it's a resume writing course and you're getting graded on it, I don't recommend that you use ChatGPT. But anyway, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is there's so much available. And the one thing that I would say, and I know it doesn't feel like it, but you certainly have time when you're in your undergraduate, and you have time to look into things that are new and exciting and that are interesting to you. And that starts to go away as you get older and as you get more and more into the workplace. So, 7:30 at night, I'm going to finish this call and then I'm going to be on another call for work still. So it's like, the time goes away, and definitely take as much advantage of it as you can. Oh, and the other thing I'd say is, so Shabika was talking about doing her master's while working. I have 2 masters. My first one I did when I wasn't working. The second one I did while I was working full-time. Highly recommend the not working full-time approach. It's much easier. But of course, if you need to keep working, then, totally understandable.
For me personally, it was very difficult for me to navigate university at first, because I came to York as an international student. I'm originally from London, England, and I kind of was just adjusting to a lot of what it's like to be living on your own, a lot of things like that. And like for the first 2 years, I didn't really like do too much. I was involved in my community a little bit, but I wouldn't really say that I was out there networking and making connections, or really just trying to leverage my own strengths in, my program. And that honestly changed for me in my third year. I really kind of just like sat myself down and like talked to myself and said, what am I trying to achieve? What are my goals? What do I want to kind of like leave behind at York once I'm done? And that was coincidentally the year that I was in Jodie's class. And she really kind of just like pushed me to kind of like do well, not only just in her class, but really, transfer that work ethic to what else I wanted to do in the community. And, especially when I started like my student leadership journey, I was kind of kicking myself at first for not putting myself out there earlier. I remember when I got into meetings and spaces, and I was kind of thinking to myself, man, I started so late. Am I gonna be able to make an impact, once I graduate and stuff like that? And once I kind of just like continue to put myself out there and just like really just develop, my sense of confidence and self-esteem, all of those kind of thoughts of, oh, am I going to be able to like create change, or, what am I going to do? All of those faded away. And I really do think that, as long as you're able to kind of like, turn those regrets or turn those worries into something positive and just reframe them for, oh, if I didn't do something at university, I know this now and I could do this or do things differently with different organizations, or go into a new space and completely just really just change the way that you approach things in general. I think that's really kind of, the key thing that I could like share and like take away even for myself now, because when I got to like my 5th year, because I did an extra year at York, I kind of just went into it with, the mindset that this is my last year. I'm gonna do everything and anything underneath this university. And I really stretched myself, and I don't really recommend that. I definitely say know your boundaries, know your limits. Because literally if there was anything student leadership wise that was at York, I was involved in. I was involved in my own community. I was the president of my college. I was doing a lot of things with different communities, whether it's athletics and recreation, and a lot of things within the Faculty of Health. I really just wanted to leverage my strengths, but also give back to the community that I was a part of. And especially now during panels like these, it's really important that, you come with an ability to understand, but also kind of just really reflect and think about what it is that you want to learn. And I really just want to share that wherever you are in your personal journeys, it's definitely not too late to start anything new or really try to figure out where you want to go. As Michael said, when you're in your undergraduate, you do have a little bit more time. So figuring things out once you're in your last semester of university, or pretty much you're done, it does get a little bit daunting, but I really do feel that once you work past those difficult emotions and you kind of set yourself up in a sense that, okay, what is my plan? Reflect on that. I really do feel that you'll be much more better off rather than ruminating on the past and trying to, really just beat yourself up about things.
All right. I noticed that the time has gone by insanely fast. So we are at 7:27. So thank you for everyone's question. I really apologize if we didn't get to your question. There were just so many, and the answers I feel like were really rich. So even if your specific question didn't get answered, I do really think there was a wealth of information, and especially a lot of the links in the chat. You can use those to the fullest effect. You can always also ask our peer mentors. message UPSA. You know, the resources are there. This is not where it ends. So we're going to do a few things in order. I would like to ask, let's see. I know our marketing ambassador did tell me that our internet was kind of iffy. So Treasure, how are we doing on the internet? Could you take our screenshots or no?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, then it's good. But it might get like a little bit weird in between, but hopefully it works out.
All right, I'm going to remove the spotlight so everyone can be seen. If you turn on your camera and, you know, smile, we would appreciate it. And yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Treasure.
Okay, so you can turn your cameras on if you want to, and if you don't feel comfortable, it's okay too. So I see like there are 3 pages on my screen, so I'm gonna say 3, 2, 1 like 3 times and then take screenshots. And then if you guys want to do another pose like in between, that's okay too. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Three, two, one. Okay, that's good. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Treasure. Now, everyone loves feedback form, am I right? Feedback forms. Now, though I know it's a tad bit tedious to do feedback forms, they are insanely useful in kind of knowing what you need as students, right? So I'm just having some tech problems. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully this, oh no, let's resume share. All right, let me send UPSA's link first. I will fix it in a second. Okay. Let me get here and here. If you could go to the chat. Here's UPSA's feedback link. Now I'm gonna work on getting this to work as well. Share my screen, share my screen. Okay, wonderful. Now we also have a QR code for the Career Center feedback form. Or let me see. Sorry, I'm gonna ask for some clarification. Did we have a feedback form, Brittany?
We don't have a feedback form from
Okay.
the Career Center, just some resources. If you enjoyed this
Mhm.
event, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter. That's where we post all of our events. And also the website careers.yorku.ca. And just a lot of the panelists mentioned maybe information interviews. And so we do have a new platform at York called Connecting YU. So if you're interested in more of an informational interview one-on-one with one of our fantastic alumni, please create a profile on there, join the career mentoring program, and we will connect you with an alumni for a career conversation. And just thank you to UPSA and the Department of Psychology, all of our panelists today and everyone who attended. I just want to say a thank you from the Career Center.
All right, thank you very much for that clarification. And so sorry for the mix-up. You fill out the UPSA form, we'll share the answers, we'll share the love, okay? So just one form for you. And yes, here are the Instagram and the Twitter for the Careers and Development Center. And here's a Connecting YU that was mentioned. And here is UPSA's QR code. I know a lot of codes. But if honestly you Google any of these names or any of the links in the chat, you'll get to kind of your destination. We have a lot of things, a lot of social media, a LinkedIn, a YouTube, Spotify. We used to do podcasts, a Facebook and Instagram, and the website. So like, you can literally find us anywhere. Now, I don't want to keep you too long, especially I know the friends who are observing Ramadan, you know, iftar is coming soon. So one, happy Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak, but also I want you to go and enjoy your meal. So if anyone has any final remarks, words, any promotions they'd like to make, now's the time. Going once,
I guess
going
all I'll
twice.
say quickly is if anyone's interested in just chatting, like
Mhm.
and like learning a little bit more or questions or anything, please feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a discussion.
All right then. With that all being said, I want to thank everyone so much for coming to the event and spending, their valuable time with us. I hope you took something away from this, and if any questions or anything comes up, you can always connect with UPSA, the Career Center. We're here for you. And with that, I bid you all good night. Take care, everyone.